Senator Lucas is a hard act to follow. And I'm going to strike a little bit different tone because I am a woman and I am here to speak for myself and for all the other women in this chamber. You know, we didn't seek this fight. I didn't run for office to fight the culture wars around choice. Our state currently has some of the most restrictive abortion laws in this country. Yet abortion is safe and legal. And this uneasy truce that we've had on this issue in recent years should have held. But our current governor, who claimed to want to move Georgia forward, is pushing this cruel, punitive, and regressive bill that's only going to hold us back. You know, I don't doubt the conviction of some in this chamber. However, a deeply held conviction does not allow one to adopt a view counter to scientific and legal fact. And let's talk about facts. Currently, Georgia's law, abortion law, outlaws abortion after 20 weeks gestational age. This despite the fact that a baby born at 20 weeks cannot survive outside of a woman's uterus. And yes, I said uterus, not womb. Paraviability, also referred to as the limit of viability, is defined as the stage of fetal maturity that ensures a reasonable chance of extrauterine survival. With active intervention, most infants born at 26 weeks and above at this point in time have a high likelihood of survival, and virtually none below 22 weeks will survive. All of this is consistent with the stories we've heard today. So this is the current state of the law. No abortions over 20 weeks. This is the current state. So how does this bill change the law? It will now effectively ban all abortions before an embryo or fetus is viable outside of a uterus and before a woman or girl knows that she's pregnant. We keep talking about 6 weeks pregnant. You know what that means? That means that maybe the woman is about 1 to 2 weeks late after an expected menstrual period. And yes, I am talking about stuff I don't want to talk about in this chamber, but let me tell you something. If you're going to get into the most private areas where women are, then you're going to have to listen to it. This has been a legal line in the sand since Roe v. Wade and Casey, and every single decision to come out of the United States Supreme Court over the last 45 years. Decisions that sought to balance the fundamental rights of women with those of the state in protecting potential lives. Once that potential life reaches the point of medical viability. You know, throughout this process, I've been floored by the scientific inaccuracies peddled by the radical interests pushing this bill, and I'm going to say it. This whole idea, I've heard the same thing over and over and over. And I was like, man, that's interesting. Much of what's been said today is part of this whole packet that was put out by National Right to Life about what to say, how to frame your message. I could go line by line and pick out exactly what some of the speakers were saying. The willingness to completely disregard the physicians in this state, and the complete lack of respect for and trust in women, mothers. First, let's start with the science. You're putting into law that the state of Georgia now legally recognizes all fertilized eggs, zygotes, embryos, as natural persons in this state entitled to the rights and benefits of any other person. Who knows what a zygote is? Counter to all medical experts, the law also attempts to establish that a zygote, an embryo, a fertilized egg, at 5.5 weeks has a beating heart. This simply is not true. At the earliest stages of pregnancy, certain embryonic cardiac activity can be detected with a transvaginal ultrasound. I don't think any of the men that spoke today have ever had a transvaginal ultrasound. I have. And it is not pleasant. Every physician has said that the fetal cardiac activity present early in pregnancies is not a beating heart, and no matter how many times you say it, no matter what you call this bill, it does not make it so, even in these precarious times where people think they can just repeat stuff, even though they know that it's inaccurate. And if, in fact, this was nothing more than political pandering, you could not have exceptions to the abortion ban based on who supplied the egg and who supplied the sperm to create the embryo. You all know that. Cruelest of all, to demand that a victim of incest file a police report before being able to terminate a pregnancy at its earliest stages is horrifying. Or that of a victim of rape. Each of you sits here in judgment of a situation that you could never comprehend and dictate what a woman can and cannot do with her body, with her life. But let me tell you something, this bill takes it much, much further. For the first time, this state will make Georgia women criminals for seeking basic reproductive care. This bill subjects both the doctor and the woman to prosecution and imprisonment for up to 10 years. Any woman who suffers a miscarriage could be subject to scrutiny regarding whether or not she intentionally acted to cause that miscarriage. She would be at risk of criminal indictment for virtually any perceived self-destructive behavior during pregnancy, which could cause miscarriage, to wit, smoking, drinking, using drugs, using legal medications, driving while under the influence, or any other dangerous or reckless conduct. And taken to its extreme, prohibitions during pregnancy could also include the failure to act, such as the failure to secure adequate prenatal medical care. Any issue of whether a woman who has participated in this risky behavior intended to cause her subsequent miscarriage, as a lawyer, I can tell you it'd be a jury question. In other words, a pregnant woman who suffers a miscarriage could be subjected to criminal investigation, indictment, prosecution, long before a jury is asked to determine whether she intentionally did anything to cause the loss. And if you think that everything I just said was exaggeration or hyperbole, I read it directly from a Georgia court case where the implications of prosecuting women for seeking abortions was laid out in no uncertain terms. Today, Senate Republicans ignore precedent, medical experts, women, and the OBGYNs in this state, the very physicians whose whole job it is to deliver healthy babies and to keep women healthy. If you want more healthy women and babies, if you want to care for women and babies, if you value life truly, you would listen to the people who dedicate their lives. This is what they do. But instead of that, not only are they ignored, but they have been threatened and told to stand down or face cuts to, let me be clear, because we heard it in the beginning, cuts to maternal health funding, family planning funding, rural birth centers, all the things that we said we were funding. Yeah, there have been threats. You know what? Voters have a right to know the lengths to which members of this body will go for politics. And let me be clear, that is what a woman has a right to know. This is cowardice. Let me tell you how it feels to be a woman and a mother of a daughter whose reproductive health this body now claims as its own. My husband and I were talking about this bill the other night, and he told me that he didn't want me to share anything personal because no one was entitled to that information. And I have always fiercely guarded my privacy. But let me be clear, the deepest, darkest times of my life have occurred in the presence of and with my physician. You see, I've been pregnant 10 times. I have seen what many of you in here have called a heartbeat 10 times, but I have only given birth twice. I have lost 7 pregnancies in varying points of time before 20 weeks and 1 after 5 months. Her name was Juliet. I have laid on the cold examination table while a doctor desperately looked for a heartbeat. I have been escorted out the back door of my physician's office so as not to upset the other pregnant women in the waiting area, my grief on full display and uncontainable. I have been on my knees time after time in prayer to my God about my losses. I have loved each and every single one of those potential lives, and my husband and I have grieved each passing. But no matter my faith, my beliefs, my losses, I have never, ever strayed from the basic principle that each woman must be able to make her decisions in consultation with her God and her family. It is not for the government or the men of this chamber to insert itself in the most personal, private, and wrenching decisions that make every single day. And that's not some smiley, happy statement that's been focus grouped. That is the reality of our lives. God chose women alone to be the fiduciaries of life, not government, not this body. My experience wasn't about abortion, but it is what's at stake here. It's about the fundamental right to privacy of women. Matters such as a woman's ability to decide whether to terminate a pregnancy involve the most intimate and personal decisions a person can make. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and of the mystery of human life. The mother who carries a child to term is subject to anxieties, physical constraints, to pain that only she must bear. And someone came up and said, who speaks for the unborn? Who represents the unborn? I will tell you, their mothers do. What gives this body the right to substitute its judgment of that of the entire medical community of this state? What gives this body the right to substitute its choices for those of the women who will no doubt bear the scars, the consequences, and who will face death, and now likely prison? Who gives this body the right to substitute its will, to override the Constitution of the United States? Each of us took an oath to protect, to uphold the Constitution, to heed established constitutional law. This oath should mean something. Because without the rule of law, we have nothing. And let me be clear. If you shirk the most basic duties you have to protect the fundamental rights of women today, then no doubt the women of this state will reclaim their rights after they have claimed your seats. I yield the well.